The massive space station called Nexus Prime hung in the darkness between stars. It was the size of a small moon, covered in lights that blinked like jewels. Ships from across the galaxy came and went from its many docking bays. This was the home of the Galactic Council, where alien species made decisions that affected billions of lives. Ambassador Tejo stood at the window of his small quarters, watching the alien ships move through space. He was a tall man with kind eyes and gray hair at his temples. His dark blue uniform carried the symbol of Earth, a simple planet with continents visible. Tomorrow would be the most important day in human history. Earth was asking to join the Galactic Council. "Sir, the preparation meeting starts in 10 minutes, said his aide, a young woman named Boram. She was an engineer by training, but the diplomatic mission needed technical experts. Her job was to explain human technology to the aliens. Tejo nodded and straightened his uniform. "Are you ready for this, Boram?" "As ready as anyone can be for talking to beings we've only seen in videos," she replied. Boram carried a datapad with information about human science and technology. She had spent months preparing for questions about Earth's capabilities. They walked through corridors filled with creatures from different worlds. Some looked like giant lizards walking on 2 legs. Others seemed to be made of living crystal that glowed from within. The strangest ones appeared to be clouds of colored gas in special suits that kept them together. The main council chamber was enormous. Thousands of seats arranged in circles faced a central platform. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in groups, talking in languages that sounded like music, roars, or electronic beeps. Universal translators made it possible for everyone to understand each other. "The humans have arrived," announced a voice that echoed through the chamber. All conversation stopped as every eye, sensor, and perception organ focused on Tejo and his small team. A massive lizard-like being stood up. This was Admiral Velthries of the Vorthak hegemony. His people were one of the oldest space-traveling species in the galaxy. Green scales covered his body and sharp teeth showed when he spoke. "So these are the mammals from the Sol system," Velthries said. His voice was deep and full of amusement. "The ones who only learned to travel between stars 50 years ago. How quaint." A crystalline being next to him began to glow brighter. This was Crystal Song of Depths, speaker for the Lumani Collective. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes. Their application for membership is certainly premature. Most species develop space travel for at least 500 years before considering galactic politics. Tejo stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Honored members of the Galactic Council, I am Tejo, speaking for the people of Earth. We may be young in terms of space travel, but we have much to offer the galactic community." Laughter erupted from several sections of the chamber. The sound came from beings that looked like floating gas clouds. These were the breathwalkers who found the idea of solid beings amusing. "What could you possibly offer?" asked Wind Through Canyons, a prominent breathwalker. "Your technology is primitive. You still use chemical rockets for basic transportation. Your weapons are crude metal projectiles and simple nuclear devices." Boram stepped forward. "If I may address the technical aspects of our application?" Admiral Velthries waved a clawed hand. "By all means, let the engineer speak. This should be entertaining." Boram activated her datapad and projected a hologram of Earth's defensive systems. "Our planet is protected by several types of weapons. We have missile defense networks, orbital platforms, and directed energy systems. Standard defensive measures for a young species," Crystal Song of Depths noted. "Though your energy weapons are remarkably inefficient. We also employ kinetic weapons systems," Boram continued, "including magnetic acceleration platforms that we call Railguns." The chamber fell silent for a moment, then exploded with laughter. Even the normally serious Vorthak representatives made clicking sounds that their species used for amusement. Admiral Velthries stood up, his large body shaking with mirth. "Railguns? You mean those theoretical devices that accelerate metal slugs with magnetic fields? No civilized species has used kinetic weapons for thousands of years." Crystal Song of Depths glowed even brighter. "The energy requirements alone make such weapons impractical. Any species with the power, generation capability to make railguns effective would have already developed proper directed energy weapons. It's like bringing a stone axe to a plasma sword fight," laughed a Breathwalker representative. "How wonderfully primitive!" Boram remained calm throughout the mockery. She had expected this reaction. "Our railgun technology is quite advanced. We can accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. Even if that were true, Admiral Velthris said, wiping tears from his large yellow eyes, kinetic weapons are utterly useless in space combat. Energy dissipates over distance, but at least directed energy weapons can be focused and controlled. Solid projectiles are just expensive ways to throw metal through space. Wind through canyons floated closer to the human delegation. Young species, you must understand. The galaxy has moved beyond such crude concepts. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and graviton disruptors are the tools of modern warfare. Your kinetic weapons are museum pieces. Teho noticed that Boram was taking careful notes of everything the alien said. Her face showed no emotion, but he knew she was analyzing every word. The engineer in her was probably already calculating ways to prove them wrong. We appreciate the Council's feedback, Teho said diplomatically. However, we believe our defensive capabilities are adequate for protecting human interests. Against what? Admiral Velthris asked. Space pirates using century-old technology? Your railguns might work against criminals, but they would be useless against a real military force. Crystal's Song of Depths created a complex pattern of lights in her crystalline body. Perhaps we should grant humanity observer status for now. They can learn proper technology from more advanced species before considering full membership. The suggestion received approval from many representatives. Observer status meant humans could watch council proceedings but had no voting rights or territorial protections. That is a generous offer, Teho said carefully. However, Earth requests full membership with all associated rights and responsibilities. More laughter filled the chamber. The idea that such a young species would demand equal status seemed absurd to most aliens. Rights come with the ability to defend them, Admiral Velthris stated. Your primitive weapons and basic technology make you unsuitable for membership at this time. Boram looked up from her notes. What if we could demonstrate the effectiveness of our defensive systems? Against what target? Crystal Song of Depths asked. We cannot risk council property for a pointless demonstration. Perhaps a practical test would be more appropriate, Wind Through Canyons suggested. If humans encounter a situation requiring military response, their performance could be evaluated. Admiral Velthris nodded. An excellent idea. Real combat will show the true value of their railgun toys and chemical rockets. The Council voted to postpone humanity's membership application until such a demonstration could be arranged. Teho accepted the decision with dignity, but Boram continued writing in her notebook. As they left the chamber, she showed her notes to the ambassador. Page after page contained detailed records of every dismissive comment, every technical criticism, and every assumption the aliens had made about human capabilities. Planning something? Teho asked quietly. Boram smiled for the first time since arriving at Nexus Prime. Just preparing for future conversations, sir. I have a feeling we'll have the opportunity to discuss kinetic weapons again very soon. The human colony ship New Sol drifted through the empty space between stars. It was not the largest ship in Earth's fleet, but it was one of the most important. Inside its metal hull lived 15,000 human families who had left Earth to build a new home on a distant planet. Captain Dongwu stood on the bridge, reading a message that had just arrived from Earth. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his hands gripped the datapad tighter than necessary. He was a man who had served in Earth's Navy for 30 years, and he knew trouble when he saw it. Bad news, Captain? Asked his first officer, a woman named Heywan who ran the ship's weapon systems. She was younger than Dongwu, but had earned his respect through years of solid service. The Galactic Council has made a ruling about Kepler 442, Dongwu said quietly. The Vorthak hegemony claims the system belongs to them. We have been ordered to evacuate our colonists within 1 standard week. Heywan frowned. But our people have been living there for 3 years. They've built farms, factories, homes for their children. This is their world now. According to the Council, newer species must give way to older ones when territorial disputes arise, Dongwu explained. Since the Vorthak have been space travelers longer than humans, they get priority. The bridge crew listened in silence. Everyone knew what this meant. 15,000 people would lose their homes because aliens had decided humans were too young to deserve their own territory. What are our orders if the Vorthak try to force the evacuation? Asked Minho, the ship's chief gunner. He was a quiet man who rarely spoke, but when he did, others listened. We are to protect our civilians during the evacuation process, Dongwu replied. We will not abandon our people to alien demands. HFY activated her command console and began reviewing the ship's defensive systems. The new Sol was not built as a warship, but it carried weapons for protection against pirates and hostile creatures in deep space. "What do we have to work with?" Dongwu asked. "Standard defensive array," HFY reported. "Particle shields, point defense lasers, and 3 experimental railgun systems that we've been testing during the voyage." The railguns were new technology that most of the crew still did not fully understand. They used powerful magnetic fields to shoot metal projectiles at extremely high speeds. Earth's engineers claimed they were more effective than traditional energy weapons, but they had never been tested in real combat. "How effective are these railguns?" Dongwu asked. HFY pulled up technical specifications on her screen. "According to the test data, they can accelerate tungsten steel slugs to 12% of light speed. The kinetic energy at impact is," she paused to check the calculations, "considerable." Boram, the engineer who had accompanied Ambassador Taeho to the Galactic Council, entered the bridge. She had returned to the New Sol after the failed diplomatic mission and now served as the ship's technical advisor. "Captain, I've been monitoring communications from the Kepler 442 system," Boram reported. "The Vorthak fleet is already moving toward our colony. Their commander is Warpack leader Sisithrak, known for his aggressive tactics." Dongwu studied the tactical display showing the approaching alien ships. The Vorthak fleet consisted of 1 large battleship, 2 smaller destroyers, and a cruiser. All were equipped with advanced plasma weapons and particle beam arrays. "What do we know about Vorthak military doctrine?" he asked. Boram activated a holographic display showing alien ship designs. "They prefer overwhelming firepower and intimidation tactics. Their plasma cannons can superheat metal to gas in seconds. Their particle beams can disrupt electronic systems across several kilometers. And they think our railguns are toys," HFY added with a slight smile. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Warpack leader Sisithrak stood in the command center of his flagship. He was a typical Vorthak, tall, covered in green scales with yellow eyes that showed his predatory nature. Around him, younger warriors prepared weapons and checked ship systems. "Tell me about these humans," Sisithrak ordered his intelligence officer. "A primitive mammalian species." "Warpack leader," the officer replied. "They have only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. Their weapons technology is extremely basic, chemical projectiles and crude nuclear devices." Sithrak clicked his teeth in amusement. "And they think they can claim territory in our space? This will be an excellent training exercise for our new recruits. Should we prepare for extended combat operations?" asked his weapons master. "Against humans?" Sithrak laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "One demonstration of our plasma cannons should send them running back to their home system. We will not even need to fire at their ship. A few warning shots should suffice." The Vorthak had been space warriors for over 3,000 years. They had conquered dozens of star systems and defeated numerous alien species. The idea that recently evolved mammals could pose any threat seemed absurd. Back on the New Sol, Captain Dongwu called a meeting of his senior staff. They gathered in the ship's war room, a small chamber filled with tactical displays and communication equipment. "We have 18 hours before the Vorthak fleet reaches Kepler 442, Dongwu announced. "Our job is to protect the colonists during evacuation. This means we may have to fight." "Against a Vorthak battle group?" asked the ship's navigator. "Captain, their smallest destroyer has more firepower than our entire ship. That assumes their weapons are more effective than ours," Boram interjected. "I've been studying the combat footage from the Galactic Council's database. Vorthak tactics rely on energy weapons that require sustained contact with targets." HFY understood immediately. "But our railguns are kinetic weapons. They don't need sustained contact, just one solid hit." "Exactly," Boram confirmed. "Energy weapons lose power over distance. Plasma dissipates, particle beams spread out, but a tungsten steel slug maintains its mass and velocity regardless of range." Minho, the chief gunner, spoke up. "What kind of damage are we talking about?" Boram activated her calculation program. A 12-gram tungsten projectile moving at 12% light speed carries approximately 2.3 terajoules of kinetic energy. That's equivalent to a small nuclear weapon, but concentrated in a projectile smaller than your thumb. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. They were used to thinking about weapons in terms of explosions and energy beams. The idea of defeating an enemy with simple physics, mass times velocity squared, seemed almost too basic to be effective. The Vorthak shields are designed to deflect energy, Boram continued. They've never had to deal with solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. Captain Dongwu studied the faces of his crew. These were good people who had signed up to protect colonists and explore new worlds. None of them wanted a fight, but all of them understood their duty. If we do this, there's no going back, he said quietly. The galaxy will know that humans are not as helpless as we appear. Maybe it's time they learned that lesson, HFY replied. I'm tired of being dismissed as primitive mammals with toy weapons. Dongwu nodded slowly. Then we make our stand at Kepler 442. Boram, I want those railguns checked and double-checked. HFY, prepare combat protocols. Minho, select your best targeting solutions. Yes, sir, they replied in unison. As the meeting broke up, Boram remained behind with the captain. Sir, there's something else. The Galactic Council representative said kinetic weapons were useless in space combat. They seemed very confident about that. And you think they're wrong? Boram smiled. I think they're about to learn the difference between theoretical physics and practical engineering. Sometimes the simple solution is the best solution. Outside the ship, space looked peaceful and empty, but everyone aboard the New Soul knew that within hours, they would either prove human technology could compete with alien weapons, or they would become another example of why young species should not challenge their betters. The colonists on Kepler 442 continued their daily lives, unaware that their fate would soon be decided by the laws of physics and the courage of their protectors. The Kepler 442 system was beautiful in the way that only space could be. The main star burned yellow-white, warming 3 rocky planets that orbited in perfect harmony. The third planet, now called New Busan by its human colonists, glowed blue and green with oceans and growing forests. Warpack leader Sistrak watched the planet through the main viewer of his flagship, the Blood Talon. His yellow eyes showed satisfaction as he studied the small human settlements scattered across the continents. This would be easier than he had expected. Warpack leader, we are detecting 1 human vessel in the system, reported his sensor officer. It appears to be a colony transport, not a military ship. Just 1 ship? Sistrak clicked his teeth in amusement. They sent a single transport to face a Vorthak battle group. These mammals are either very brave or very stupid. His tactical officer activated the main display, showing both fleets. The Vorthak force consisted of 4 powerful warships arranged in a classic attack formation. The human ship sat alone near the planet, looking tiny by comparison. Shall we demand immediate surrender? Asked the communications officer. Open a channel, Sistrak ordered. Let me speak to whoever commands that pitiful vessel. On the bridge of the New Soul, Captain Dongwu received the incoming communication. The main screen flickered to life, showing the scaled face and predatory smile of the Vorthak commander. Human vessel. This is Warpack leader Sistrak of the Vorthak hegemony. The alien began. His voice was deep and threatening, designed to intimidate enemies into submission. You are trespassing in Vorthak territory. Remove your colonists immediately or face the consequences. Dongwu stood calmly in front of the screen. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. HFY monitored the weapon systems while Boram checked power distribution throughout the ship. Warpack leader, this is Captain Dongwu of the Earth vessel New Soul, he replied in a steady voice. We are protecting our civilians during evacuation operations. We will defend ourselves if attacked. Sistrak laughed, showing rows of sharp teeth. Defend yourselves? With what weapons? Our intelligence reports indicate you carry only primitive kinetic devices and basic energy systems. Our defensive capabilities are adequate for our needs, Dongwu replied simply. The Vorthak commander studied the human captain's face, looking for signs of fear or uncertainty. Instead, he saw only calm determination. This puzzled him slightly, but he dismissed it as mammalian stubbornness. You have 1 hour to begin evacuation, Sistrak declared. If your people are not leaving the planet by then, we will demonstrate why the Galactic Council grants us territorial priority. The communication ended, leaving the bridge of the New Soul in silence. Every crew member understood what the threat meant. The Vorthak would attack the defenseless colonists to force human withdrawal. Status report, Dongwu ordered. The evacuation ships are loading civilians as fast as possible, reported the communications officer. But it will take at least 8 hours to get everyone off planet safely. Heywan looked up from her weapons console. Railgun systems are fully charged and ready. Targeting computers are locked onto the Vorthak vessels. Boram checked her engineering displays. Power distribution is optimized for combat operations. All non-essential systems have been shut down to maximize energy available to weapons. Dongwu nodded. Then we do what we came here to do. We protect our people. Aboard the Blood Talon, Warpack leader Sithrak positioned his fleet in a traditional Vorthak attack formation. The 4 ships spread out in a wide arc, surrounding the human vessel and the planet behind it. This formation was designed to showcase overwhelming firepower and prevent enemy escape. Weapon status? He asked his tactical officer. All plasma cannons are fully charged, Warpack leader. Particle beam arrays are ready for sustained bombardment. Our shields are at maximum power. Sithrak studied the tactical display with satisfaction. His ships carried enough firepower to reduce the human transport to glowing debris within minutes. The energy weapons of his people had been perfected over thousands of years of warfare. Begin the demonstration, he ordered. Fire warning shots around the human vessel. Let them see what real weapons can do. The Vorthak ships opened fire simultaneously. Brilliant beams of superheated plasma lanced through space, passing close to the new soul but not hitting it directly. The energy weapons lit up the darkness like artificial stars, creating a spectacular display of raw power. Impressive, Dongwu commented as the plasma beams faded. Their weapons are exactly what our intelligence reports described. Should we respond? Asked Heywan. Not yet, the captain replied. Let them show us everything they have first. The Vorthak fleet continued their demonstration for several minutes. Plasma cannons fired in sequence, creating walls of energy that illuminated the entire system. Particle beams swept past the human ship, their exotic radiation causing aurora effects in the upper atmosphere of New Busan. Warpack leader Sithrak expected the human vessel to begin retreating immediately. Instead, it held position exactly where it had been before the attack began. This surprised him enough that he opened communications again. Human captain, you have seen our capabilities, he said, no longer amused. Your ship cannot survive a direct assault from our weapons. Withdraw now while you still can. We appreciate the demonstration, Dongwu replied politely. However, our evacuation is not complete. We will remain in position to protect our civilians. Sithrak's yellow eyes narrowed. Then you will die pointlessly. All ships target the human vessel. Prepare for sustained bombardment. The Vorthak warships moved into closer formation, their weapons charging for a concentrated attack. Energy readings spiked as plasma cannons and particle beam arrays reached maximum power. On the new Sol, Boram monitored the enemy ships through her sensors. Captain, they're preparing to attack with everything they have. Power signatures indicate they're charging for simultaneous fire from all vessels. Understood, Dongwu replied. Heywan, are our weapons ready? Railgun systems are fully charged, she confirmed. Targeting solutions are locked in. Just give the word. Minho, the chief gunner, spoke from his station. Sir, should we warn them about our capabilities? Dongwu considered this for a moment. They've had their warning. They were told we would defend ourselves. The Vorthak fleet finished their attack preparations. 4 warships hung in space like metal predators, their weapons glowing with contained energy. Warpack leader Sithrak raised his clawed hand to give the final attack order. All ships, open fire. Destroy the human vessel. Space erupted in light as the combined firepower of the Vorthak battle group focused on the new Sol. Plasma cannons sent streams of superheated matter across the void. Particle beams created corridors of exotic energy that could disrupt matter at the atomic level. The human ship's shields absorbed the initial impact, glowing bright blue as they deflected the energy weapons. But everyone knew the shields could not hold for long. Against such massive firepower, shields, at 60% and falling, reported the defensive systems officer. Hull temperature rising, added Boram. We can take maybe 2 more volleys before shield failure. Captain Dongwu watched the tactical display as the Vorthak ships prepared for their second attack. Their weapons were already recharging for another devastating bombardment. Captain, Heywan asked, her finger hovering over the firing controls. Dongwu took a deep breath. In the next few seconds, they would either prove that human technology could compete with alien weapons, or they would become another footnote in galactic history. Heywan, he said quietly, demonstrate our capabilities. The weapons officer smiled grimly and pressed the firing control. Railgun 1 firing. Deep in the ship's hull, massive electromagnetic coils activated in sequence. Magnetic fields thousands of times stronger than Earth's own field accelerated a tungsten steel projectile down a kilometer-long barrel. In less than a second, the slug reached 12% of light speed and shot into space. The projectile was invisible to normal sensors. It was just a piece of metal, smaller than a person's thumb, moving through the darkness between ships. No energy signature, no heat trail, no visible light. Just mass and velocity, guided by the most fundamental laws of physics. Warpack leader Scifistories was preparing his second attack when something struck his flagship. There was no warning, no flash of energy weapons, no time to raise additional shields. One moment his ship was intact. The next moment something had punched a perfectly round hole through the forward section, the command center, the engine compartment, and out the back. The blood talons shuddered as atmosphere vented into space through the hole. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the ship as automated systems tried to seal the breach. Scifistories stared in disbelief at the damage reports flooding his screens. "What hit us?" he roared at his sensor officer. I don't know, Warpack leader," the officer replied in confusion. "Sensors show no energy weapon discharge from the human vessel. No plasma signatures, no particle beam emissions, nothing." Scifistories looked at the tactical display, then at the hole in his ship's hull. The damage was unlike anything he had ever seen. Energy weapons left burn marks and melted metal. This looked like something solid had simply passed through his ship as if it was not there. "Perhaps their sensors malfunctioned," suggested his tactical office. The second tungsten slug crossed the distance between the human ship and the Vorthak destroyer in exactly 1.7 seconds. Moving at 12% of light speed, it carried enough kinetic energy to power a small city for a year. The destroyer's advanced shields, designed to deflect plasma and particle beams, offered no resistance to solid matter moving at relativistic velocity. The projectile struck the alien warship's engine section with surgical precision. Metal, ceramic armor, and exotic materials parted like water as the slug passed through. Critical systems that had been built to withstand energy weapon bombardment simply ceased to exist along the projectile's path. Commander Velkash, captain of the destroyer Night Hunter, felt his ship lurch as the engine compartment exploded. Emergency lights bathed the bridge in red as damage reports poured in from all sections. "Engineering reports complete engine failure," shouted his technical officer. "Power core containment is failing. We're losing life support." Velkash stared at his tactical display in confusion. Like his Warpack leader, he had detected no energy weapon discharge from the human vessel. Yet something had just crippled his ship with a single impossible impact. "What kind of weapon creates a perfectly straight hole through reinforced hull plating?" he demanded. Nobody on his bridge had an answer. Warpack leader, Scifistories, watched in growing disbelief as his formation fell apart. His flagship was venting atmosphere and running on emergency power. His destroyer was dead in space, spinning slowly as its crew struggled with catastrophic damage. "All ships evasive maneuvers," he ordered. "The humans have some kind of stealth weapon system." The remaining Vorthak vessels began random course changes, trying to avoid whatever invisible force was destroying their fleet. The cruiser Sharpclaw accelerated upward, while the destroyer Deathstrike dove toward the planet's gravity well. On the bridge of the New Sol, HFY tracked the alien ship's movements with professional calm. "They're trying evasive patterns, but they're still in range." "Should I continue firing?" Captain Dongwu studied the tactical display. Two Vorthak ships were heavily damaged, but still potentially dangerous. The other two were maneuvering frantically but seemed reluctant to continue their attack. One more demonstration should suffice, he decided. "Target the cruiser's weapons array." Railgun 3 locked and loaded, Minho reported from his gunner station. "Targeting their primary plasma cannon assembly. Fire when ready." The third tungsten slug launched silently from the New Sol's magnetic acceleration system. This shot was even more precise than the first two, aimed not to destroy the target ship, but to disable its most dangerous weapons. The cruiser Sharpclaw was in the middle of an evasive turn when the projectile struck its forward weapons pod. The impact removed the entire plasma cannon array in a shower of metal fragments and escaping gases. Secondary explosions rippled through the ship as stored energy from the weapon system discharged. Randomly, Captain Thorax of the Sharpclaw found himself thrown against his command chair as his ship bucked from the impact. Half his weapon system showed offline, and his sensors still could not identify what was attacking his fleet. "Warpack leader," he transmitted on the emergency channel. "Whatever the humans are using, it's unlike anything in our tactical databases. My weapons pod is gone, completely removed from the ship." Scissothrak's mind raced as he tried to understand what was happening. In 3,000 years of Vorthak military history, no enemy had ever inflicted such precise, devastating damage without using detectable energy weapons. The humans appeared to be shooting invisible projectiles that passed through shields as if they did not exist. "Human vessel," he transmitted on the general communication frequency, his voice no longer confident and threatening. "What weapons are you using against us?" Captain Dongwu appeared on the Vorthak screens, still standing calmly on his bridge. Behind him, the human crew continued working at their stations as if nothing unusual had happened. "We are using the defensive systems you were informed about during our diplomatic mission," Dongwu replied. "Magnetic acceleration weapons that your representatives dismissed as impractical toys." "Impossible," Scissothrak snarled. "Kinetic weapons cannot penetrate modern deflector shields." Boram stepped into view beside her captain. "Warpack leader, your shields are designed to deflect charged particles and energy beams. They work by creating electromagnetic fields that redirect incoming plasma and particle streams." She activated a small holographic projector that showed a simple physics diagram. "However, our projectiles are electrically neutral solid matter moving at relativistic velocity. Your shields cannot deflect them any more than they could deflect a small asteroid." "But the energy requirements," protested the Vorthak commander. "Accelerating matter to such velocities requires enormous power generation." "Correct," Boram agreed. "Which is why we built ships with adequate power systems to support our weapons. The Galactic Council representatives assumed we were too primitive to solve the engineering challenges involved." Scissothrak looked around his damaged bridge. Emergency repair teams worked frantically to restore basic systems, but the hole through his ship would take weeks to properly fix. His proud battle group had been reduced to wrecks and cripples by 3 shots from weapons he had dismissed as museum pieces. "This is not possible," he muttered. "No young species develops such advanced technology so quickly." Haywan spoke from her weapons station. "Warpack leader, would you like a more detailed demonstration? We have 17 more railgun projectiles loaded and ready." The threat was delivered in a calm, professional tone that somehow made it more frightening than any battle roar. Scissothrak realized that the humans had been holding back during the engagement. They could have destroyed his entire fleet in the opening seconds of combat. "Warpack leader," transmitted Captain Thorax from the Sharp Claw, "recommend immediate withdrawal. Our ships are not equipped to handle this type of weapons technology." Similar messages came from the other Vorthak vessels. The destroyer Deathstrike reported critical damage to its navigation systems. The Night Hunter was requesting emergency evacuation of non-essential personnel. Warpack leader Scissothrak had commanded fleets for over 200 years. He had conquered star systems and defeated dozens of alien species, but he had never faced an enemy who could destroy his ships with weapons that his sensors could not detect, or his shields could not stop. "Human captain," he said finally, his voice much quieter than before. "You have made your point. We acknowledge your defensive capabilities. Our evacuation will be complete in approximately 6 hours, Dongwu replied. "I recommend you use that time to make repairs and reconsider your approach to dealing with human colonies." The communication ended, leaving the Vorthak fleet alone with their damaged ships and shattered assumptions. Warpack leader Scissothrak stared at the tactical display showing the human vessel holding position near the planet. It looked exactly the same as before the battle began. No visible damage, no signs of stress, ready to continue fighting if necessary. "How many shots did they fire?" he asked his tactical officer. 3, Warpack leader. 3 projectiles disabled our entire battle group. And they indicated they have 17 more ready to fire? "Yes, sir. Plus whatever manufacturing capability they have for producing additional ammunition." Scissothrak slumped in his command chair. For 3,000 years, the Vorthak had dominated through superior technology and overwhelming firepower. Energy weapons, particle beams, and plasma cannons had made them the most feared military force in their sector of the galaxy. Now a species that had been traveling between stars for less than a century had rendered all of that technology obsolete. With simple physics and good engineering. "Begin emergency repairs," he ordered wearily. And send a priority message to Vorthak High Command. They need to know that our intelligence about human capabilities was incomplete. On the planet below, human colonists continued loading evacuation ships, unaware that their safety had been secured by 3 pieces of metal moving very, very fast. The loading process would continue for several more hours, but everyone now understood that they had time to do it properly. Captain Dongwu walked to the bridge's observation window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness, the Galactic Council was going to receive a very interesting report about the effectiveness of primitive human weapons. Boram, he said quietly, prepare a detailed technical report on this engagement. I suspect Ambassador Tejo will need it for his next meeting with the Council. Already working on it, Captain, she replied. I'm particularly looking forward to explaining why simple kinetic energy is sometimes more effective than exotic energy weapons. Heiwan secured her weapon systems and began the post-combat maintenance routine. Captain, should I inform Earth Command about the results? Send them everything, Dongwu decided. Fleet Command needs to understand what our railgun technology can accomplish against advanced alien weapons. The battle for Kepler 442 was over. It had lasted less than 10 minutes and involved only 3 shots, but its consequences would reshape the balance of power across the entire galaxy, proving once and for all that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective ones. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began with an atmosphere of confusion and disbelief. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the Great Chamber at Nexus Prime, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sounds, lights, and chemical signals that the universal translators struggled to process. Admiral Velthries of the Vorthak hegemony stood at the central podium, his usually confident demeanor replaced by something approaching shock. Behind him, a holographic display showed the damaged remains of Warpack leader Sistthrak's battle group. Ships with perfectly round holes punched through their hulls, disabled weapon systems, and emergency repair crews working frantically to restore basic functions. Honorable representatives, Velthris began, his voice carrying none of its usual arrogance. 3 days ago, a human colony vessel engaged 4 Vorthak military ships in the Kepler 442 system. The results of this engagement require immediate council attention. A wave of clicking, buzzing, and resonating sounds swept through the chamber as various species expressed their confusion. The idea that a single human transport could challenge Vorthak military vessels seemed absurd to most observers. Crystal Song of Depths, the Lumeni representative, glowed brighter as she processed the visual data. Admiral Velthris, these damage patterns are unlike anything in our military databases. What weapons could create such precise penetration through advanced hull materials? That is exactly what we need to discuss, Velthris replied grimly. The humans use their railgun technology, the kinetic weapons that this council dismissed as primitive toys. Laughter erupted from several sections of the chamber, particularly from the Breathwalker delegation. Wind through canyons floated forward, his gaseous form shimmering with amusement. You're suggesting that metal projectiles defeated Vorthak plasma weapons and particle beam arrays? Wind through canyons asked. This must be some kind of elaborate jest. I assure you it is not, Admiral Velthris replied coldly. 3 projectiles from human magnetic acceleration weapons disabled an entire Vorthak battle group in less than 10 minutes. The laughter died away as representatives began studying the damage reports more carefully. The visual evidence was undeniable. Something had punched clean through the most advanced military vessels in the Vorthak fleet. Ambassador Tai Ho entered the chamber, followed by Engineer Boram and several other human officials. The crowd parted to let them pass, many alien representatives staring at the humans with new expressions of uncertainty. Ambassador Tejo, called Admiral Velthris, your people's actions in the Kepler 442 system require explanation. Tejo bowed politely before addressing the assembly. Honored representatives, human forces acted in strict accordance with Galactic Council protocols. We protected our civilians during evacuation operations and defended ourselves when attacked. Defended yourselves? Wind through canyons demanded. Your single transport destroyed 4 military vessels. Not destroyed, Boram corrected, stepping forward with a datapad. Disabled. Our weapons were specifically targeted to minimize casualties while demonstrating the futility of continued Aggression. She activated a holographic projector that filled the air above the podium with technical diagrams and mathematical equations. The Vorthak fleet was disabled using 3 tungsten steel projectiles, each weighing 12 grams and accelerated to 12% of light speed. Crystal Song of Depths began pulsing rapidly as her crystalline form processed the calculations. Impossible, she resonated. The energy requirements for such acceleration would exceed the power output of most planetary generators, which is why human ships are designed with adequate power systems, Boram replied simply. We engineered our vessels to support our weapons technology, rather than assuming our weapons were impossible. A new voice joined the discussion as Fleet Commander Zethkar of the Hegemony Defense Corps transmitted from his flagship in orbit. His reptilian features showed deep concern as he addressed the Council. I have reviewed the complete battle data from Warpack leader Sistrak, Zethkar announced. The human weapons show characteristics that make them unlike anything in our tactical databases. No energy signature, no detection warning, no defense possible with current shield technology. But they're just metal slugs, protested a representative from the Silicon Collective. Any species can throw rocks through space. Rocks moving at 12% of light speed, Boram corrected. Each projectile carries approximately 2.3 terajoules of kinetic energy. That's equivalent to the explosive force of several fusion weapons, but concentrated in a projectile smaller than your manipulator appendage. The mathematical reality began settling over the assembled representatives. Species that had built their military doctrines around energy weapons suddenly faced the prospect that solid matter moving fast enough could render all their defenses useless. How many of these weapons do humans possess? Asked Admiral Velthris quietly. Tejo consulted his own datapad. Every human colony ship carries at least 3 railgun systems for defensive purposes. Our exploration vessels mount similar weapons for protection against hostile life forms and space pirates. And your home system? Crystal Song of Depths asked, her glow dimming with concern. Earth's orbital defense platforms include several hundred railgun installations, Tejo replied matter-of-factly. We also have ground-based systems and mobile platforms aboard our fleet vessels. A profound silence fell over the chamber as the implications became clear. Humans had not just developed 1 or 2 experimental weapons. They had built an entire military infrastructure around kinetic technology that most alien species considered impossible. Wind through canyons floated closer to the human delegation. How long have you possessed this technology? We began developing magnetic acceleration systems over 2 centuries ago, Boram answered. The current generation of railguns represents approximately 50 years of continuous refinement and improvement. 50 years? Admiral Velthris repeated. You've had weapons capable of defeating our most advanced warships for 50 years, and you never mentioned this during diplomatic contacts. We tried to mention it, Tejo reminded him politely. During our first diplomatic mission, Engineer Boram specifically described our railgun capabilities. The Council's response was dismissive. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably as they recalled their reactions to the initial human presentation. What had seemed like primitive boasting now looked like a serious intelligence failure. Perhaps we should reconsider the human application for Council membership, suggested a new voice. From the back of the chamber, Fleet Admiral Sunmi had just entered, wearing a crisp Earth Navy uniform with insignia that many aliens now found more intimidating than before. Admiral Sunmi, Tejo acknowledged. I wasn't expecting you to attend this session. Recent events have accelerated our diplomatic timeline, Sunmi replied. Earth Command has decided that full Council membership is no longer optional, but necessary for galactic stability. She activated her own holographic display, showing star maps with dozens of new markers scattered across multiple sectors. As of this morning, 12 human colony expeditions have been equipped with upgraded defensive systems. Our exploration fleets have been retrofitted with the latest railgun technology. You're militarizing the entire human expansion effort? Wind Through Canyons asked. We're ensuring that human colonies can defend themselves against future territorial disputes, Sunmi corrected. The Kepler 442 incident demonstrated that diplomatic solutions are not always available to younger species. Crystal Song of Depths pulsed with increasingly rapid flashes as she processed the strategic implications. If humans can deploy this technology across multiple star systems, The balance of power in this sector could shift dramatically. That depends entirely on how other species choose to respond, Admiral Sunmi said. Humans prefer peaceful coexistence and technological exchange, but we will not allow our people to be displaced by species who mistake diplomacy for weakness. Admiral Velthris studied the star charts showing human expansion routes. Many of them pass through or near territories claimed by various council species. The prospect of armed confrontations with weapons that could punch through any known defense system was sobering. What do humans want from the council? He asked finally. The same thing we requested originally, Tejo replied. Full membership with all associated rights and responsibilities. Equal representation in territorial disputes. Recognition that human colonies have legitimate claims to the systems they develop. And in exchange, Borum stepped forward with a new set of technical diagrams. We offer our knowledge and experience with kinetic weapons technology. Several council species have already expressed interest in technical exchanges. Our railgun systems for their advances in energy manipulation and exotic matter physics. You would share this technology? Crystal Song of Depths asked, her form brightening with interest. With council members in good standing, Sunmi confirmed. Humans believe that galactic security is enhanced when all species have access to effective defensive systems. The chamber buzzed with dozens of side conversations as representatives considered the implications. Species that had dismissed human technology were now calculating how quickly,